Sarah Polley.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
The last time you were on the show, we were talking about Away From Her. This time, you're talking about Splice. You couldn't have made a different film here.
That's true. Yes.
We don't want to spoil it, but it gets weird. You play a scientist and with her partner, and they do something that's unethical, and then the whole world falls apart.
That's pretty much, yeah, that's it.
Okay, but it gets weird in the middle of it, if you can imagine.
Really weird. I mean, weird, really the word weird is an understatement. It's the most strange, surprising, shocking thing in the world, I think, what happens in this film.
See, I figured that that's what it takes to get you to make a movie like this.
Well, I think it's, I mean, I have to say, when I read this script for this film, it was really just one of the best scripts I'd ever read. And I'm not a huge sci-fi fan or a huge horror fan, but I think this film crosses so many boundaries, both in terms of the genre it is and also in the moral boundaries it crosses and challenges. And I couldn't put it down. So yeah, it's not like the typical film I would normally gravitate to, but it really was beautifully, beautifully written, and this character was so insane and intense and ambitious and strange, and for once the mad scientist kind of gets to be a girl, and I think that's kind of amazing too.
And your character doesn't always have the redeeming qualities that I think a lot of actors look for in a character.
Yeah, no, she's capable of a lot of cruelty and a lot of unnecessary ethical line crossing on the way to achieving her ambition and her goals. So
you say it's the best script that you had read for this sort of thing. Have you? What's your process like for picking films now? Are you reading every weekend? Are you looking for something in particular?
Well, it depends. Like when I'm directing, like right now I'm prepping my next film, and I'm not looking at all at scripts to act in. I can't even imagine acting right now. But when I am, I think it's just about, is this a film I would actually go and see? Is it a film that would engage me? Is it a film that would make me interested and have interesting conversations with people? And so I don't really care what genre that falls into, sure. And so I'm sort of unspecific in terms of category, I think.
Now, did you sign on to do an Adrian Brody film, or did Adrian Brody sign on to do a Sarah Polley film?
As far as I know, we both sort of came to the project sort of at the same time, but yeah.
And tell me about the director.
Vincenzo Natali is, I think, one of the most visually brilliant filmmakers there is out there, and he's working with a great script. And I think the biggest surprise about working with Vincenzo is how amazing he is with actors, which I think is just really rare to find a really great visual filmmaker and someone who's brilliant at communicating on an emotional level with actors.
I wonder, since you've established yourself as a director as well, so you know how to direct actors, or you have your way of directing actors, has it changed the kind of actor you are when you look at a director and say, I would have done it differently?
No, I mean, that's the joy of acting, is you don't have to have that kind of responsibility. And you can just kind of play, and if things don't go well, it's not your fault. And if things go really well, you can sort of go along for the ride. So I try to just be an actor when I'm acting, and be as collaborative as possible. And part of the fun of it is trying to get into someone else's head and figure out what they're trying to get and how you can help provide that.
It's the difference that when you're an actor, you can be up at 3 o'clock in the morning, but you're out at a bar. When you're a director, you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's just because of anxiety.
I think that's like the perfect way of framing it, actually. Yeah, no, for sure.
So when you get ready to prep your next film that you're going to direct, at what point does the anxiety start to set in?
It's set in at about 2 o'clock in the morning last night.
Really?
Yeah, I start shooting on July 12th, and literally like 2 o'clock in the morning was the moment where I was like, wow, that car horn's really loud. And I went, oh, I think I'm panicking about my film. So yeah, I mean, it's months and months of terrible anxiety, but to get to do the most privileged job in the world, which is, take these ideas you have alone in a room and have 60 brilliant people help you figure out how to make them come true.
You know, when Away From Her comes out, it's what can Sarah Polley do as a director? Now people know what you can do as a director. So when you go to make this film, how aware of that are you?
I think it's really important to try to not be aware of it. And I guess it's harder with a second film than on a first. But on my first film, I kept feeling like the worst that can happen is it's a terrible, horrible failure, and I never make a film again. And I think that sort of served me well in that I felt like I was trying to just make every moment as genuinely honest and true as I could. And to try to hold on to that, I think would serve me well on this one. But of course, it's easier said than done.
Tell me about this movie, this new one you're doing.
So it's a movie, it's a romantic drama with Michelle Williams and Seth Rogen and Luke Kirby and Sarah Silverman. And it's a movie about relationships. It's about the honeymoon period of relationships and what do we do when that ends, and what do our relationships become, and what do we do about that?
That's one of the most fascinating things about becoming an adult, is the the question that's the one question nobody can answer is how long is this going to last?
Yeah.
Like, and how relationships do evolve. Is that something that I mean, even with Away From Her, it's the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what I'm most interested ultimately is in relationships and romantic relationships and what happens as years go by. And I think we have a huge attachment to things remaining the way they are when they're at the beginning, and we have a tremendous attachment to newness. And I think that can become sort of problematic. And so what do we do with that empty space? And do we just keep filling it with new things, or do we live in that space where something ultimately is missing? But it's funny. Really funny.
But if it wasn't funny, we would be suicidal.
Yeah.
So you have to make it funny in that respect, don't you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's important. And the truth is, I mean, it is kind of hilarious the way we flounder around in our relationships and in our lives. So to make a film that didn't have that as a component would sort of be a lie.
Do you pull on your personal life? Because I wonder if your partner looks at you and goes, really? That's going to be in the film? Every time you have a fight or something, you're like, oh, you're putting that in your film now, aren't you?
I don't think anything, it's weird, I read this interview this morning with Xavier Dolan, and he said something like, nothing that you ever do as an artist is 100% fiction. So I think in that sense it's true, but the only thing I can actually identify as coming from my life is the main character has a tremendous fear of changing planes, like a phobia about it, and that is actually the only detail from my life.
You don't like changing planes?
I don't like to change planes.
Like connections, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the worst.
It scares me. I think I'm never ever going to get out of the airport. In fact, I'm certain of it. So.
Do you have dreams about it at night?
Oh yeah, no, I'm not. It's not a small fear. It's something we've been working on. A lot of people have been helping me work on this. No, it's this fear that somehow everyone else will figure out how to get to their next flight and I won't. And in a weird way, I think there's a metaphor there for being afraid of being in between things, which is the constant state of life. So.
Or you could have done.
I think I've mistaken this for my shrink's coach. I apologize.
I figured out my fear of flying. I figured out how to handle planes, though. I figured it out. I've actually decided for me that it is actually the most beautiful place in the world is being stuck in an airport, because it's the one place where everybody has the exact same. They're going the same way as you, which is somewhere else. And so I feel like I'm always in between the next step there. So because like you have been in a lot of airports, I've repositioned myself to go, this is amazing. I am part of a collective. We're all doing the same thing here. It's not going to help you.
That's why I like the garbage strike.
Is that what you really?
Yeah, because everybody was talking about and complaining about the same thing, and I felt like I was part of a community.
Yeah, totally. We're in it together.
Yeah.
Now, you know, the sidebar to some of your career choices that had you said yes to the Bourne series, the Jason Bourne series, and had you said yes to Almost Famous, you could have afforded your own private plane, and you never would have had to wait.
George,
should have talked to me earlier.
How did I not come here earlier? I don't think the show was around at that point.
No, it probably wasn't.
You've made really interesting choices, and I think a lot of people, because your career has worked out, I think at the time, did you know you were making the right decision? You turned down the Bourne series.
It was definitely the right decision for me at the time, yeah, and probably would be now as well. I don't know, I mean, I didn't do it out of any sort of grand picture plan. I just, yeah, I think at the time there was probably an independent film I was more interested in, or I was trying to make my own short films, and I think it's always good to make those choices in the moment and at the moment and because of the moment instead of with an overall career plan.
And you should never have to even look back at them because it's past, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, except when you run the intro and then I have to look back on them and go like, was it the right move?
It was always the right move if you survived. What happened with the Oscars? The Oscars, I was watching and I'd heard about this Sarah Polley, a short film that was coming up, and then all of a sudden it got kind of crazy and I heard the controversy. And I know sponsors sometimes do try to sneak in moments. What happened for you? Because people were really excited to see it and then they got to see it, but it was weird.
It was weird, all right. No denying that. I would say that I would probably leave that issue to whatever gobbledygook I said in the press release at the time. It was a bit of a mess, and I probably don't want to dredge it up again. But needless to say, I thought I was making a short film for the Heart and Stroke Foundation, was really happy to be doing that, and then I found out after the film was made that it was something else entirely, so.
But it speaks a lot to the idea of, as an artist, you need to feel like you're in control of what you're doing.
Yeah. Or you just need to be told what you're doing.
That's another part of it, too.
You know, at the beginning. So
that's fair enough. When people go see Splice, I think there are going to be points where they look at it and go, holy shit, I can't believe this is happening. What's the one scene, without giving it away, that people should look for that was the most fun for you?
I mean, there are
Why did you scowl?
Because there's so many, I think, moral boundaries that get like stomped over in this movie. Like, they're not just crossed, they're just like torn apart and burned. So I think there are a lot of moments where the audience gasps and a little cluster of teenage boys laughs really hard and cheers. Yeah. And you know, it's shocking, and there are moments that are morally just like totally indefensible and sort of fantastic because of that. But I think there'll be a lot of conversations about it afterwards. And
for sure.
I mean, I feel kind of shocked by the movie at times. So
That'll be all
yeah.
right. It's called Splice. It's in theaters June the 4th. Sarah Pauly, everybody.